It was the week that changed history forever, a collision of betrayal and love, politics and faith, death and life. Crowds shouted, rulers schemed, disciples fled, and yet in the chaos, something eternal was unfolding. Passion Week isn't just ancient history, it's a story that still demands our attention today. So before we dive into the drama, let's ask the most basic question. What exactly is Passion Week? Passion Week, also known as Holy Week, is the final week of Jesus' earthly life, leading up to his crucifixion and resurrection. It begins with his triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday and unfolds through key events like the cleansing of the temple, the Last Supper, his betrayal, trial, and death on the cross, culminating in his resurrection on Easter Sunday. This week reveals the depth of God's love, the cost of redemption, and the fulfillment of prophecy, forming the heart of the Christian gospel. Passion Week unfolds during the Jewish feast of Unleavened Bread, which follows Passover and recalls Israel's hurried exodus from Egypt. Against this backdrop, Jesus' death and resurrection fulfill and transform the meaning of these feasts. He is the sinless lamb crucified at the very time Israel remembered deliverance. The gospel writers highlight this timing with purpose. John presents Jesus as the true Passover lamb, while the Synoptic Gospels emphasize the Last Supper as a Passover meal. When new Bible students see this connection, they begin to harmonize the accounts and recognize how each author, guided by the Spirit, reveals Jesus as the fulfillment of both feast and prophecy. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is a 7-day observance that begins immediately after Passover, forming an 8-day celebration of Israel's deliverance from Egypt. It commemorates the haste of the Exodus, when the Israelites left so quickly that there was no time for their bread to rise. Passover, observed on the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, marks the night God passed over the homes of the Israelites during the 10th plague, sparing their firstborn while striking Egypt's. The following day begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which lasts for 7 days, from the 15th to the 21st of Nisan. During this time, the people were commanded to eat bread made without yeast and to remove all leaven from their homes. Exodus chapter 12, verses 15 to 20. Leaven symbolized corruption and delay, so its removal reflected both purity and urgency. Together, Passover and unleavened bread formed a sacred week of remembrance, celebrated annually as a sign of God's power, mercy, and covenant faithfulness. Passover is observed through a scripted ceremonial meal called a Seder, which means order in Hebrew. The Seder follows a structured sequence of rituals, prayers, and symbolic foods that retell the story of Israel's deliverance from Egypt. The meal is eaten in stages, each element, such as bitter herbs, unleavened bread, and wine, introduced with explanation. Traditionally, the head of the household leads the gathering, offering a teaching on each item's meaning. This storytelling is interactive, often involving questions from children, and is designed to pass down the memory of redemption from generation to generation. Jesus decided to eat his last Passover meal with his disciples. Christians know this as the Last Supper. In the Passover Seder, bread and wine carried ancient meaning. The unleavened bread was the bread of affliction, recalling Israel's slavery and the haste of their escape, while the wine was a symbol of joy and God's covenant with his people. But at his final meal, Jesus reinterpreted these symbols with breathtaking boldness. He took the bread and said it was his body, broken for them. He lifted the cup and declared it was his blood, poured out as a new covenant. What once pointed back to Egypt now pointed forward to the cross, transforming the meal from a remembrance of deliverance from Pharaoh into a proclamation of deliverance from sin and death. As Jesus and his disciples reclined together, he spoke with solemnity, predicting that one of them would betray him. The room grew tense as each disciple asked, "Is it I?" During the meal, Jesus also warned them that they would all fall away, quoting scripture to show that the shepherd would be struck and the sheep scattered. Peter, fiercely loyal, protested, but Jesus gently told him that before the night ended, Peter would deny him 3 times. After singing a hymn, they walked to the Mount of Olives and entered the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus asked his disciples to keep watch while he prayed, but they fell asleep. Alone in anguish, he pleaded with the Father, asking if the cup might pass from him. Yet he submitted fully. "Not my will, but yours be done." An angel came to strengthen him, but his agony deepened, and his sweat fell like drops of blood. Returning to his disciples, he found them sleeping again and said, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?" Suddenly, a crowd arrived, led by Judas, who betrayed Jesus with a kiss. Chaos erupted. One disciple drew a sword and struck a servant, but Jesus healed the man and rebuked the violence. He was arrested and led away, while the disciples fled, just as he had foretold. Jesus was taken to the high priest's house, where he was questioned, mocked, and held through the night. Peter followed at a distance, trying to stay close. But when confronted, he denied knowing Jesus 3 times. Then a rooster crowed. Peter remembered Jesus' words and wept bitterly, while Jesus remained silent before his accusers. The night of betrayal had begun, and every prophecy was unfolding. After his arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was led by the crowd, armed with swords and clubs, to the house of the high priest. There, the religious authorities had already gathered, prepared to interrogate him under cover of night. Though many witnesses were brought forward, their testimonies conflicted. The leaders sought a charge that would justify condemning him, but nothing stuck. Finally, 2 witnesses claimed Jesus had said he would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. The high priest stood and demanded, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed?" Jesus answered, "I am," and added that they would see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. At this, the high priest tore his robes and declared the statement blasphemy. The council agreed, and the mood turned violent. Jesus was mocked, spat upon, and struck. Guards blindfolded him and taunted, "Prophecy, who hit you?" Meanwhile, Peter lingered in the courtyard trying to stay close, but when confronted, he denied knowing Jesus 3 times. Then a rooster crowed. Peter remembered Jesus' words and broke down in grief, while inside, Jesus remained silent before his accusers. By morning, the council had reached their verdict. Though they lacked the authority to carry out execution under Roman law, they bound Jesus and led him away to the governor, seeking a death sentence. The religious trial was over, but the political one was just beginning. After the religious leaders condemned Jesus for blasphemy, they brought him to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Though they had declared him worthy of death, they lacked the legal authority to carry out an execution. Only Rome could issue a death sentence. So they reframed their accusation. Instead of blasphemy, they charged Jesus with claiming to be a king, a threat to Caesar. Pilate questioned Jesus privately, asking, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus responded, "My kingdom is not of this world," indicating that his rule is being established by divine agency. Pilate found no fault in him, but the pressure from the crowd and the religious leaders was mounting. Pilate sent Jesus to Herod, who mocked him and sent him back. Again, Pilate tried to release him, offering to free one prisoner as was customary during the feast. The crowd chose Barabbas, a known rebel, instead. Pilate questioned Jesus once more, and Jesus spoke of truth. Pilate replied, "What is truth?" Not as a philosophical inquiry, but as a weary dismissal. In that moment, Pilate wasn't debating epistemology. He was acknowledging that truth held no power in a politically charged situation, spiraling beyond his control. The truth wouldn't save Jesus, and it wouldn't save Pilate either. Despite declaring Jesus innocent, Pilate ultimately gave in to the crowd's demands. He washed his hands in front of them, symbolically distancing himself from the decision, and handed Jesus over to be crucified. Roman soldiers mocked him, placed a crown of thorns on his head, and led him away. The trial was over, but the cross was still ahead. Jesus was led outside the city, carrying his own cross, to a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull. There, Roman soldiers crucified him between 2 criminals. Above his head, they placed a sign, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." As he hung on the cross, the crowd mocked him, religious leaders jeered, and soldiers cast lots for his clothing. Yet even in agony, Jesus spoke words of forgiveness. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Darkness fell over the land for 3 hours, and with a loud cry, Jesus gave up his spirit. The curtain of the temple was torn in two, and a Roman centurion declared, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Many of Jesus' followers had fled, but a group of women remained, watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome. After his death, a respected member of the council named Joseph of Arimathea, who had not consented to the other's decision, boldly asked Pilate for Jesus' body. Pilate granted the request, and Joseph, joined by Nicodemus, wrapped the body in linen and spices in accordance with Jewish burial customs. They laid Jesus in a new tomb, carved out of rock, a tomb Joseph had prepared for himself. The women followed and saw where he was laid. Because the Sabbath was approaching, they could not complete the burial rites. So they returned home to prepare spices and perfumes, intending to return after the Sabbath to honor him. Their quiet devotion set the stage for what would come next, the discovery that the tomb was empty. Early in the morning, just after the Sabbath had ended, a group of women, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome, went to the tomb where Jesus had been laid. They carried spices, intending to honor his body with proper burial rites. But when they arrived, they found the stone rolled away and the tomb empty. Confused and afraid, they entered and saw a young man dressed in white, an angel, who said, "Do not be afraid. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen." The angel instructed them to go and tell the disciples, especially Peter, that Jesus would meet them in Galilee. Mary Magdalene ran to tell Peter and John. The two disciples raced to the tomb. John arrived first, but hesitated at the entrance while Peter went in. They saw the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth folded separately. The body was gone. John saw and believed, though they still did not fully understand that Jesus had risen from the dead. They returned home, but Mary remained outside the tomb weeping. As she looked inside again, she saw two angels seated where Jesus' body had been. Then, turning around, she saw Jesus himself, but did not recognize him at first. When he spoke her name, Mary, she knew it was him. Overwhelmed with joy, she ran to tell the others, "I have seen the Lord." This moment marked the beginning of everything new. The tomb was not just empty. It was the doorway to resurrection, to hope, and to the fulfillment of every promise. The tomb was empty. Not because something went wrong, but because everything had gone exactly right. Death was not the end. The cross was not the final word. Jesus rose just as he said, and that changes everything. This isn't just a story to remember. It's a hope to enter, a grace to receive, a Savior who still calls your name. So come, bring your questions, your doubts, your weariness. Come and see the Word. Come and see the risen one. The invitation still stands. We're building a space for honest, grace-filled discovery. If that sounds like something you want to be part of, subscribe and click the bell to stay connected. Thanks for watching.